In a secluded corner of the forest, where the moss covered the stones like a caress of time, lived an elderly master named Rio. His wooden cabin smelled of incense and tea, and his voice was as serene as the murmur of the nearby stream. One night, when the moon floated like a white lantern between the pines, a young man arrived, breathing heavily. His eyes were filled with anger, and his heart like a storm that could not find rest. "Master Rio," said the young man, "I need answers. Why do we suffer so much? Why do people hurt others without reason? Why is life so unfair?" Rio looked at him with tenderness, and after a long silence, he invited him to sit by the fire. The crackling of the wood filled the air like an ancient sigh. "Imagine a man who has been struck by a poisoned arrow," said the master. "Instead of asking for help, he insists on knowing who shot the arrow, what kind of wood it was made from, what type of feathers it had, and why it was done. While he becomes tangled in his questions, the poison continues to act." The young man frowned, not fully understanding. Rio served him a cup of tea and offered him a blanket. "Not all questions need an answer now. Sometimes the wisest thing is to attend to the wound and let go of the arrow." And the forest, a silent witness, filled with a profound silence. The young man, wrapped in the blanket, watched the steam rising from the cup like a silent dance toward the darkness of the sky. The master's story had touched him, though he still didn't fully understand its meaning. "But, master," he whispered after a long silence, "if I don't understand why I was hurt, how can I heal?" Rio looked at him with eyes that had seen many seasons pass, and answered with a slow voice, "The mind wants to understand. The heart wants peace. Sometimes both things don't arrive at the same time." The fire crackled as if approving the old man's words. Outside, the wind brushed the branches with a calm murmur, as if the night itself were listening. "You are not here to carry every why," Rio continued. "You are here to learn to let go of what you cannot change, and to tenderly care for what still lives inside you." The young man lowered his gaze. For the first time in a long while, he felt no need to speak. He simply breathed, and that breath, slow and deep, was like the first step toward his true healing. The poison no longer seemed so strong. The night moved slowly, as if walking barefoot on the earth. The young man closed his eyes for a moment and listened to the sounds of the forest. A distant owl, the rustling of leaves, the patient rhythm of the stream. "Master," he finally said, "I've spent so much time wondering why I was betrayed. Why they didn't love me the way I expected. Why life took things from me that I didn't want to lose." Rio nodded softly, as if he already knew those words before they were spoken. "Each thought you repeat," he said, "is like a leaf falling again and again onto the same river. But the river does not stop. The river does not ask. The river flows." The young man took a deep breath. Inside, something loosened, as if a rope that had bound him for a long time began, slowly, to untangle. "So, should I not search for answers?" The master smiled. "You can search for them if you wish, but don't let the search stop you from living. Sometimes peace isn't in understanding, but in stopping resistance." And in that moment, the young man understood that some wounds don't heal with explanations, but with presence. The young man gazed at the fire, hypnotized by the sway of the flames. He didn't speak. He didn't think. He was simply there, breathing, present, as he hadn't been in a long time. Rio calmly stood up and opened the door of the cabin. A fresh breeze entered, carrying with it the damp aroma of the night. "Come," he said to the young man with a gentle gesture. "I want to show you something." They walked in silence to a small nearby hill. From there, they could see the sky full of stars. There were no lanterns, no noise, no expectations. Just the vastness. "Do you see that sky?" Rio asked. It is full of mysteries, and yet it doesn't need answers to shine. The young man sat on the cold grass. He felt his thoughts slow down, as if the night itself were cradling them. Sometimes all we need is this, Rio said in a whisper. A little silence, a little space, and the humility of not knowing. And in the center of that humility, something new began to grow in the young man's heart. Not an explanation, but a gentle peace, like a breeze that no longer hurt. The night breeze caressed their faces. The young man remained silent, feeling how something within him slowly opened, like a flower at dawn. Master, he said softly, how does one let go of a wound that lives so deeply in the chest? Rio picked up a fallen leaf from the ground and held it in the palm of his hand. It is not let go of all at once, he replied. It is let go like this leaf. First, by stopping holding onto the tree, then by letting the wind carry it away. The young man looked at him with squinted eyes, as if sleep were beginning to caress his mind. What if it hurts a lot? Then honor that pain, whispered Rio. Embrace it without fear, without judgment. But don't make it your home. Pain is a visitor, not a residence. The young man closed his eyes. The master's words were not just ideas. They were a balm, like a song without lyrics, like the sound of the river when everything else has quieted down. That night, beneath an immense and silent sky, he understood that letting go is not forgetting. It is allowing the past to no longer weigh as heavily as it once did. The moon was high now, pouring its silvery light over the trees and the grass. Everything seemed suspended in perfect stillness. The young man, with a more relaxed face, let out a long sigh, as if releasing something he had been holding onto for years. I feel like something is leaving me, master, he murmured, but I don't know exactly what. Rio nodded softly. It is the poison, he said in a barely audible voice. Not the poison of the arrow, but the poison of resistance. The poison of holding onto the past, of fighting against what has already been. That is the deepest poison, and you are beginning to free yourself from it. The young man let his shoulders fall, as if finally allowing himself to rest in the body, in the moment, in life as it is. And what remains when the poison is gone? The master looked at the sky, then at the young man. Space remains, he replied, and in that space, peace sprouts. The young man rested his head on his knees and closed his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't trying to understand. He simply felt, and in that feeling there was something sacred. The night continued its course, as calm as a deep breath, without hurry, with no need to reach anywhere. The young man fell asleep right there, beneath the starry sky, as if the earth had cradled him in its invisible arms. And while he slept, he dreamed of an open field, without paths, without walls, just space, just wind. When the sun began to paint the horizon with soft golden hues, Rio was still there, sitting in silence, watching over the boy's peace like a guardian of the invisible. Upon waking, the young man rubbed his eyes and looked around. The forest was still the same, but something inside him had changed. Master, it doesn't hurt the same anymore, he said, his voice rough with sleep. I feel like I can breathe deeper. Rio smiled at him. This is how true healing begins. Not when everything is resolved, but when you learn to live without carrying everything. The young man stood up, stretched, and looked at the world with a different gaze. The pain was still there, somewhere, but it no longer dominated him. It was no longer the center of his existence. Thank you, he murmured with a slow bow. Thank you for daring to look inward, the master replied. The arrow was just an excuse. What mattered was discovering that you yourself held the medicine. And the sun, a silent witness, began to rise between the trees. With a lighter heart, The young man began his journey back along the forest path. Each step was softer than the last, as if he were walking on the clouds of his own transformation. The song of the birds accompanied him, and the sun's rays pierced through the branches, caressing his face with the warmth of a new beginning. He hadn't found all the answers. He hadn't erased the past, but he had let go of the need to understand it all. And in that gesture, the pain stopped ruling his life. As he walked, he remembered the words of the Master. Suffering doesn't come only from the wound, but from not letting it go. And then, deep within himself, something bloomed. A nameless calm, a formless freedom, as if he could finally walk without the arrow. Life as it was no longer needed to be different. It was enough, and in that sufficiency, he found rest. The breeze blew one last time between the trees, soft as a blessing, as the young man disappeared among the forest paths, carrying with him not a burden, but a peace that no one could take from him.